They called it a legacy celebration, but it felt more like a funeral with better lighting. The Costco sheet cake, the lukewarm cans of Diet Dr. Pepper, the half-hearted clapping. It was all there. I was the corpse that forgot to lie down. My name tag read Dana Cole, Senior Compliance Systems Officer, though after 19 years, it might as well have said Dead Woman Walking. I'd spent nearly 2 decades keeping the company, Virion Technologies, out of orange jumpsuit territory. 6 rebrands, 4 CEOs, 1 insider trading scandal, and an ex-CFO who now sold protein supplements on TikTok. And still, that Monday morning, I stood in a cubicle graveyard watching Lexi Vale, our 31-year-old CTO, pitch her new era like she'd invented oxygen. Lexi wore pastel blazers like armor and spoke in buzzwords that could curdle milk: agility, innovation, synergy. She said the word sunsetting like she was reading a eulogy for everyone over 45. "We're building a digitally native workforce," she said, smiling with the confidence of someone who thought Excel macros were witchcraft. Digitally native? My ass. These kids needed a tutorial to open PDFs. I sat there with the polite smile of a woman suppressing the urge to throw her coffee across the room. Lexi clicked through slides of stock photo millennials pretending to brainstorm, made eye contact with me exactly once, then looked away, like I might glitch her chakra alignment. They thought my silence meant surrender. A 52-year-old compliance relic with a limp and a garden obsession would just pack up, take her severance, and fade into suburbia. But here's the thing about old systems. We remember everything. While Lexi floated her helium buzzwords, I was backing up folders, quietly, methodically, off the shared drives. Every falsified audit, every duplicate invoice, every internal eyes-only memo that smelled like money laundering wearing deodorant. And while I'm at it, quick sidebar. 97% of you watching haven't subscribed. Hit the damn button. Doesn't cost a cent and tells the algorithm gods this channel's worth keeping alive. After 20 years in corporate hell, getting noticed is a miracle. Now, back to the meltdown. Lexi didn't technically fire me. Too risky. HR handled it, as they always do, with euphemisms sharp enough to draw blood. Voluntary transition pathways. A phrase so twisted it should have been embroidered on a psychopath's throw pillow. They sent me an invitation to a wisdom roundtable. Translation: a soft exit meeting with cupcakes and betrayal. They sat me next to Tyler from App Integration, a 20-something who once synced Slack with the espresso machine and called it innovation. "Ma'am," he said, handing me a fork. I considered stabbing him with it. The next morning, my laptop greeted me with a banner. Personalized retirement pathways, tailored just for you. I clicked decline. The page refreshed. Same banner, same grin. I clicked decline again, still smiling. So was I. That was when I began encrypting. Not everything, just the pieces that mattered. Enough to prove I hadn't hallucinated the rot underneath Virion's shiny mission statements. They gave me 2 weeks to clear out. I took 1. I packed slow. Every sarcastic sticky note, every cracked stapler, every memo I'd saved out of spite. Don't trust Mason in finance. He microwaves tuna. But the last thing I put in the box wasn't a joke. A dented metal lunchbox, my dad's from when he worked the GM plant in Detroit. I'd brought it in during the 2020 layoffs as a reminder of the people who built real things. It had lived under my desk ever since. No one ever questioned it. Not the interns. Not Lexi's new security team. Black polos, earpieces, all ex-mall cops with superiority complexes. Inside that lunchbox now? 1 plain USB drive, labeled in black Sharpie. Insurance. I didn't even flinch sliding it in. Let Lexi smile. Let them laugh about legacy staff. They had no idea what system they'd just tried to delete. Because I'd built the damn thing, and I knew exactly where the ghosts still lived. The legacy celebration took place in Conference Room B, the one that always smelled faintly like mildew and expired ambition. Someone had printed my face on a sheet cake with edible ink that made me look jaundiced. The frosting read, "Thanks for the decades, Dana." They didn't even know how many decades there were. HR sent Rebecca Sloan, their people operations specialist, which is corporate for professional executioner. She wore a bubblegum pink blazer and smiled like she practiced empathy in front of a mirror every morning. "We just want to honor your contributions," she chirped. "You've been foundational." Foundational? Like asbestos? Like lead paint? Like the faulty wiring that gets blamed when the building burns down? I nodded politely and forked another bite of stale spinach pinwheel. "Rebecca," I said between chews, "how come 3 different compliance audits from 2022 have 3 different vendor numbers for the same cybersecurity firm?" Her smile flickered for a nanosecond. "Oh, I'm sure that was just an accounting oversight." Then she waved at the intern to dim the lights for the slideshow. The slideshow. 32 slides of my face and name misspelled in 12 fonts. A photo from 2009, where someone cropped out my ex-husband but left in his arm. A quote from Lexi herself. "Dana's commitment to documentation has been inspiring." Translation. She kept receipts and we hated it. The room clapped. I smiled because smiling was the last dignity I had left. No one mentioned the nights I stayed late unclocked, or the phishing attempt I personally caught that saved them from a $2 million procurement breach. But they remembered the time I wore 2 different shoes. They'd made it a Slack emoji. When the lights came back on, I stood, thanked everyone for their kind words, and shuffled back to my cubicle, still technically mine for 3 more days. I sat down, knees aching, bones heavy, and opened my drawer. Inside was the metal lunchbox. I pulled it out, just a little, enough for the fluorescent lights to glint off its dented lid. Inside, the USB drive slept like a coiled snake. I held it in my palm. It hummed. Or maybe that was just my pulse. Was I crazy? Bitter? Paranoid? Maybe Lexi had cleaned things up. Maybe those weird double-billed invoices were honest mistakes. Maybe I should just take my pension, buy a used RV like Cheryl from Payroll, and spend the rest of my life labeling bird photos on Facebook. But then, I remembered Lexi's first all-hands meeting, a year ago. She'd stood on stage, white teeth gleaming under LED lights, and said, "We can't let the past slow down the velocity of our future." That line had always sounded like a threat. So I powered on the old encryption tool, one I hadn't touched since the 2017 audit migration. The interface was archaic, a pixelated fossil, but reliable. I began segmenting the files, invoices, vendor contracts, internal logs, into folders disguised with names like birthday photos and vacation itinerary, each wrapped in AES 256 encryption, the digital equivalent of body armor. Then I added one file named readme.txt containing a single line. "If you're reading this, you messed around. Now find out." When I was done, I slipped the drive back into the lunchbox, clicked it shut, and sat still in the humming quiet. My reflection in the monitor looked older, sharper, and strangely calm. Maybe nobody would ever care. Maybe they'd bury all of it under NDAs and PR statements about navigating transitions with empathy. But fatigue isn't surrender, and silence isn't consent. The next day, the office air was thick. Not from drama, just from the kind of tension that hums like a fluorescent bulb about to die. HR called it exit processing. I called it what it was, an inventory of my dignity. That's when Jordan from Cybersec appeared. 24. Nervous mustache. Smelled faintly of energy drinks and optimism. He leaned over my cubicle wall like a man about to confess to a felony. "Hey, Dana," he whispered. "You ever notice any files disappearing from the shared compliance archive?" I didn't blink. "Which ones?" He shrugged the way guilty men do. Whole folders, vendor logs, Q3 audits, stuff that shouldn't just poof. I stared. They poofed? He nodded. Yeah. And the backups? Too clean. Like someone bleach wiped the metadata. He tapped twice on the cubicle wall. Quiet Morse code for, I saw nothing. Then walked away. That was the moment I stopped breathing. Not from fear, from recognition. The ghosts weren't gone. They were being erased. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw blank folders, scrubbed metadata, ghosts of files that once screamed fraud. By dawn, I was sitting at my kitchen table in sweatpants and a faded Women in Tech 2009 t-shirt, sipping coffee that tasted like burnt cardboard. The sky outside was gunmetal gray. Fitting, really. At 7:13 a.m., I logged into the company VPN through my personal laptop. My old tower PC whirred like a dying jet engine, its fan coughing dust and defiance. I'd kept it for sentimental reasons, but now it was my fortress. I started copying the archive. Not the sanitized version, not the corporate-approved mirror. The real one. It took over 3 hours. Every old invoice, every doctored compliance log, every duplicate vendor payment routed through subsidiaries that shouldn't exist. By 10:34, the backup was mine. I split the data into 2 copies, one locked behind layers of encryption on my home server, hidden inside a fake folder called Christmas Photos 2012. The second on a brand new USB drive, straight out of the packaging. I formatted it twice. Then I labeled it with masking tape and a black Sharpie, insurance. I stared at it for a long time. That little piece of plastic suddenly weighed more than the entire company. I walked into the garage and pulled out my dad's metal lunchbox from its shelf. Same dents, same latch click. Nestled the USB between a packet of Splenda and an old napkin. Closed it. It clicked like a trigger. The seed was planted. The janitor's name was Curtis, but everyone called him Sarge. Tall, gray at the temples, eyes like he'd seen war and didn't like what it taught him. He moved through the halls with quiet precision, always mopping near camera blind spots. For years, he'd been invisible. Until now. That week, I noticed him watching the security monitors longer than usual. Then, one morning, he caught my eye and gave me a subtle chin tilt, a silent warning. You're being watched. I didn't nod. I didn't speak. Just turned left instead of right, pretending I'd forgotten where the break room was. That was how it started. A quiet alliance in the undercurrent of corporate surveillance. Curtis never asked questions, and I never offered answers. But sometimes, when the hallway was empty and the hum of the vending machine masked our words, he'd murmur little fragments of advice. Don't use the freight elevator this week, Ms. Cole. If you need to print anything important, use the admin copier. Lexi's got keyloggers on the personal terminals. He never looked at me when he spoke, just kept mopping, like he was whispering to the floor. I didn't thank him. That would have broken the spell. Instead, I kept digging. And what I found made my stomach turn. 5 shell companies, all listed as third-party digital audit vendors. 3 registered in Miami, sharing the same WeWork address. 2 others routed through a holding firm in the British Virgin Islands. Lexi's name never appeared, but her fingerprints were all over it. Her grad school roommate ran 2 of the shells. Her brother-in-law was COO of another. The invoices were grotesque. One company billed $42,000 for a cyber threat landscape overview. The actual report? 6 pages of ChatGPT boilerplate and a stock image of a padlock. It was perfect. Too perfect. The kind of fraud built by people who thought no one would ever look twice. I didn't send it to HR, or the press, or even the SEC. Not yet. Instead, I composed an email to Elaine Mercer, my attorney. Semi-retired, Mean as a hornet, wore orthopedic heels, and once sued a university into bankruptcy for age discrimination. Subject line, for contingency. Body, if I disappear, send this. Attached, a PDF labeled Grocery List final.pdf. Then I encrypted everything, wiped the traces from my system, and went to pour myself a drink. At the loading dock that night, Curtis was replacing a fuse near the security panel. He looked up just once. "Power's been glitchy," he muttered. "Emergency lights failed twice." "You think that's coincidence?" I shook my head. He met my eyes for the first time, not as a janitor, but as a soldier who knew what quiet wars cost. "Be smart, Dana," he said. "They don't play fair when the money's this big." I didn't answer, just nodded, tucked the root beer he handed me into my coat pocket, and walked into the night. The air outside smelled like copper and fear. They gave me balloons. 3 limp helium balloons in company colors, teal, gray, and beige, tied to my cardboard box like sympathy flowers at a wake no one wanted to attend. The strings tangled on my coat button as I walked toward the lobby. Behind me, the empty cubicles hummed with the same quiet dread as a shipwreck site. 2 security guards flanked me, one older, one young, both with that overcompensating posture that screams ex-mall cop energy. I wondered if they practiced their synchronized walk in the mirror. Near reception stood Lexi Vale, the queen of pastel tyranny herself, arms crossed, chin tilted, smile polished for the company Instagram feed. She'd shown up late to my farewell, naturally. The star never enters before the camera's ready. Her heels echoed across the lobby tiles like gunshots. "Well," she said, her tone syrupy enough to rot teeth. "What can I say? Dana's been part of this ecosystem longer than some of us have been alive." The interns chuckled, the kind of nervous laugh you give when you don't know who you're supposed to please. "She's been dependable," Lexi continued, letting the word dependable hang like a participation ribbon. "And while the industry evolves, sometimes legacy systems struggle to keep up. But Dana, you've handled this transition with grace. We're all better for your contributions." Grace. That's what they call it when you don't flip a desk on your way out. I smiled. Not because I felt gracious, but because I knew something Lexi didn't. Something ticking quietly in my dented lunchbox like a coiled serpent. She offered her hand, manicured, empty, performative. I took it. Her grip was soft. Mine wasn't. Then I turned, walked to the front desk, and handed my badge to the guard. Company policy required all containers to be inspected upon exit. He pointed at my lunchbox. "Mind if we take a look?" "Of course," I said sweetly. The younger one popped the latch. Inside, napkins, a bag of trail mix, 1 granola bar, and in the center, like a relic, a plain USB drive labeled in black marker, "Insurance." He froze. The older guard leaned closer, squinted at the word, then looked up at me. Something passed between us. Not fear, not exactly. Recognition. The look of a man who'd once held a live grenade and lived to tell the story. He closed the lid gently and slid the lunchbox back toward me, hands trembling just enough to be human. "You're all clear," he said quietly. I nodded, took the box, and walked out through the glass doors without looking back. Outside, the air tasted like metal and unfinished business. Let Lexi keep her smile. Let them post their farewell photo on the company Slack, because the moment that latch clicked shut, the countdown began. The drive wasn't armed yet, but if anyone tried to open or copy the folder labeled Photos 2014, the secondary protocol I'd built, my little insurance policy, would wake up. Not malware, not ransomware, something cleaner, sharper. Disclosure. Targeted. Timed. Irreversible. At 7:16 p.m., I was at home, reheating leftover lasagna, bathrobe damp from a shower, half listening to reruns of Frasier whispering through the living room. My phone buzzed. Once, twice, then a third time. That specific vibration pattern I'd set years ago for system alerts. I wiped marinara off my fingers and picked it up. Alert. Unauthorized login attempt. Folder photos 2014. Location. External IP flagged. Unknown device. Decryption attempt blocked. My hands didn't shake. Not yet. I set the phone down, walked to my desk, and powered on my old desktop tower. It whirred to life like an aging sentinel answering a call to arms. 3 seconds later, the secondary monitor blinked. Insurance deployment V3.1. Targets 27. Status. Sending green bars flickered across the screen. CC Midwest Office. Reuters Ethics Desk. Whistleblower Portal. Anonymous FTP. Elaine, encrypted inbox. Curtis, personal email. All receiving, all live. Every falsified audit, every shell vendor, every manipulated contract, gone from my hard drive, but alive everywhere that mattered. The insurance had detonated. At first, the house was quiet, just the hum of my computer and the clink of my spoon against the lasagna dish. Then my phone started buzzing again. Once, twice, then like a swarm. Buzz. Dana, was this you? Jesus Christ, have you seen the internal feeds? Who leaked the Vail audits? Please call me back. Please. Elaine's name flashed across the screen next. I didn't answer. I just watched the chaos unfold, pixel by pixel. My inbox lit up like a city skyline at night. Headlines, alerts, threads multiplying faster than my brain could keep up. On my secondary monitor, a cascade of confirmations scrolled across the console. Upload complete. Upload verified. Upload mirrored. Then the flood began. At 9:43 p.m., a dormant Twitter account called @TomTomSum at Contractor Hell posted, "Tipline just got a dump of something very spicy. Offshore vendors, shell companies, Lexi Vale's fingerprints everywhere. Developing story." At 10:11, a text came from an unknown number. "We know it was you. You have no idea what you've done." I blocked it, turned the phone face down, poured myself a bourbon. In the kitchen, the refrigerator light hummed softly, the only sound besides my heartbeat. I didn't feel fear. Not yet. What I felt was clarity. They'd cracked open Pandora's lunchbox thinking it was a souvenir. Now the ghosts were loose. At 10:45, Curtis texted, "Clean hit. Stay low." I typed back, "Still breathing, still watching." Then I went to the window. The wind was moving through the oak trees like it knew something. The kind of night that makes you think maybe the storm isn't outside. My thumb hovered over the kill switch on my backup server, the emergency wipe. One tap, and everything would vanish. Evidence, proof, leverage, all gone. But I didn't press it, because for the first time in years, I didn't feel disposable. By Monday morning, the meltdown had a name. The Vail Files was trending. My phone lit up before sunrise. Breaking: SEC launches preliminary review into Virion Technologies vendor practices. Reuters confirms anonymous data drop linked to internal compliance archives. CTO Lexi Vale unavailable for comment. The woman who'd live-streamed her own cosmetic laser peel had gone silent. I made oatmeal, fed the neighbor's cat while she was at dialysis, turned on the morning news with the volume low. The first chyron hit like poetry. Audit leak exposes fraud at Virion Tech. SEC reviewing IPO legitimacy. Then the second, CEO. CCTO, under federal review amid kickback allegations. And the third, my favorite, CTO Vail unavailable for comment. Unavailable. The influencer CTO of radical transparency fame, ducking reporters behind NDAs and legal shields. The press called it unverified leaks. The forums called it whistleblowing. One Reddit thread called it the Dana Protocol. I didn't name it. Didn't need to. My name wasn't anywhere. But my fingerprints, digital, precise, undeniable, were. By noon, Virion's executive inboxes were hemorrhaging panic. An internal memo leaked within hours, clarifying narrative around recent disclosures. They should have titled it, "She Had Backups." It was full of legal doublespeak and panic sweat syntax. We're aware of a miscommunication involving third-party vendor reporting. All records are under review. Please refrain from written correspondence until further notice. The leaks didn't stop. Screenshots of Slack messages surfaced next. Lexi calling one staffer Deadwood and another a fertility risk. Reddit threads bloomed like wildfire. One titled Lunchbox Gate had 10,000 upvotes in an hour. Another, Operation Fossil Fuel. Some said the leak came from a legacy mole who'd worked there since the Bush administration. Others swore it was an AI whistleblower that achieved consciousness and snapped. I read them all, barefoot, coffee in hand, calm as a saint watching sinners panic. Then came the kicker. Investor exodus. At 3:27 p.m., CNBC ran the segment. A grim-faced man in a blue tie muttered about fiduciary responsibility and failure of compliance culture. When he bailed, the dominoes fell fast. By 4:00, a congressional memo leaked. Preliminary inquiry into Virion Technologies' financial irregularities and potential age discrimination practices. I stared at that line until my eyes burned. Age discrimination. The rot I hadn't even meant to expose. It had been hiding in plain sight. Lexi had called us unscalable. Turns out the law had another word for it. By Tuesday morning, Virion was burning. Not with fire, but with panic. No alarms, no smoke. Just a slow, choking collapse under the weight of its own lies. Slack channels filled with screaming silence. Executives moved meetings to private phone calls only. IT locked down half the internal systems in a panic, which just made everyone more suspicious. The meltdown wasn't loud. It was surgical. Every press email, every investor call, every sanitized statement about temporary instability only fanned the flames. The story was everywhere. Whistleblower leak uncovers vendor fraud at Virion Technologies. CTO Vail under federal review. Age discrimination probe launched following internal document release. Each headline read like a chapter in my secret autobiography. I sat at my kitchen table, stirring my coffee slowly, watching the anchors talk about my life like it was an abstract case study. They had no idea the woman behind the storm was sitting in flannel pajamas, feeding her neighbor's cat, and muting every incoming call. By noon, the dominoes began to fall. Alan Pierce and Priya Sharma, Lexi's right and left hands, were terminated for cause. No goodbyes, no farewell emails. Their company profiles just vanished. One of the remaining VPs wrote on an anonymous forum. 2 execs wiped clean. No exit statements. HR pretending they never existed. Corporate ghosts. Vaporized. Then Carla, from payroll, texted me out of nowhere. We hadn't spoken since her going away cupcakes 2 years ago. Mara. She still called me that. Old habits. They delayed the IPO. Lexi's being subpoenaed. I didn't believe it was you, but it had to be, right? Thank you. Even if you'll never admit it. I didn't reply. I just stared at the screen, the little typing bubble that never finished its thought. At 3:27 p.m., CNBC broke the next wave. Investor exodus. Virion's largest stakeholder withdraws over ethical instability. The man on camera said words like fiduciary responsibility and corporate accountability, but all I heard was, "They're running." Within hours, others followed. By 4:02, a memo leaked from the House Committee on Financial Ethics. Preliminary inquiry opened into Virion Technologies' financial irregularities and potential age discrimination practices. That last phrase, age discrimination, hit harder than the rest. It wasn't even part of my plan, but it was real. The rot had roots deeper than I'd realized. Lexi's digitally native workforce nonsense wasn't just arrogance. It was policy. She'd called us unscalable. HR had rebranded demotions as reskilling initiatives. And now, someone in DC was listening. It should have felt like victory. But sitting there, in my too quiet house, I felt something else. Not triumph, not even relief. Grief. For the years I spent keeping a sinking ship afloat, for every late-night audit I saved while someone else took the credit, for every time I swallowed my instincts because some VP in a tailored suit told me, "We've got protocols for that." Turns out their protocol was fraud. And my compliance? My silence? That had been complicity. The catharsis didn't come like thunder. It came like rain. Steady, cleansing, almost gentle. I wasn't crying for them. I was mourning what I'd wasted. That Friday morning, I woke to a new email. Subject: Final departure review. Confirmation required. Body: Hi Dana, just doing a last sweep of records. Wanted to confirm you didn't leave behind any personal items or hardware. Thanks, Jared. Security ops. No greeting, no sign-off, just a passive-aggressive whiff of, "We know you did it, but we can't prove it." I stared at it for a moment, then hit reply, typed a single character, hit send, deleted the thread. And that was that. By noon, every major outlet had joined the frenzy. Class action. Brewing. Over 40 former employees file against Virion for age discrimination. SEC investigation expands after document dump. Lexi Vale's IPO dreams implode. The feeds were endless. LinkedIn thought pieces, Reddit sleuths, journalists smelling blood. The truth was loose, and there was no putting it back. By Saturday morning, Virion was in full collapse. The headlines had gone from speculation to certainty. The leaks weren't unverified anymore. They were evidence. Federal subpoenas had been issued. 3 board members resigned to pursue new opportunities. And Lexi Vale, the pastel prophet of synergy, had gone dark. Her Instagram was wiped, her LinkedIn deleted. The same woman who once live-streamed her skincare routine couldn't be reached for comment. The silence was almost poetic. I didn't celebrate. I packed a bag. 3 hours north, in upstate Michigan, sat a cabin I hadn't visited in nearly a decade, my father's old place near Lake Presque Isle. He built it in the 70s, back when cedar paneling was fashionable and a transistor radio counted as high-tech. I arrived just before dusk. The lake glowed amber, still and endless, a mirror reflecting everything I'd survived. The air was cleaner than any NDA I'd ever signed. I opened all the windows, let the smell of pine and cold air fill the room, and set my dented lunchbox on the wicker table beside the window. Same box, same weight, different contents. No USB this time, no encrypted folders, just an envelope filled with wildflower seeds I'd bought from a roadside co-op. I ran them between my fingers, dry, papery, but alive. The kind of fragile that still knows how to bloom. The TV was off. The phone was silent. No Slack pings. No urgent follow-ups. No corporate sermons about agility or scalability. For the first time in 20 years, I wasn't being watched. Somewhere, Lexi was sitting in a conference room surrounded by lawyers, rehearsing her lines for the investigation. She'd call it a misunderstanding, a legacy system error, maybe even a failure of oversight. But she'd know. She'd remember the lunchbox, and she'd remember my handshake. Steady, deliberate, final. The following week, an email found its way to my inbox. No name, just a burner address. We're forming a class. If you ever want to join, the door's open. You gave us air. I didn't respond. That fight belonged to them now. Mine was over. I made coffee. Real coffee, not the corporate powdered sludge that haunted the break room for years, and took it to the porch. The mug warmed my hands as a crane circled the lake, wings slicing the silence clean in half. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel bitter. I didn't feel righteous. I just felt free.